The Sports Desk at the Columbus Dispatch presents the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast. With your host, Ohio State basketball beat writer Adam Jardy.
Brandon Petit says, "Give me the rock." Here it goes. Up and away. Slam jam bam. And now he does a little dance.
Now, the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Today is Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026. It's my official duty to welcome you into episode 566 of the BuckeyeXtra Men's Basketball Podcast. Welcome to Jubilation City. And shout out right off the top to any of you Star Wars fans out there who maybe figured out what that reference was there. Shout out Emperor Palpatine. Shout out the Clone Wars. I'm here with you in the Jardy basement. It just ticked past midnight a couple of minutes ago. Been kind of a long, busy day. So, yes, I am back up from vacation, but only for this day, essentially. So, as I mentioned on the last podcast, which published last week, but was recorded the week before that, I wanted to get something out to you guys last week because I took the first week of vacation I've taken all year and got away and unplugged and enjoyed some family time, and then got back to Columbus and also scheduled this week for vacation as well. I've got days to use, and this is the slowest time of the calendar year when it comes to the men's basketball beat. But because we are in Columbus, I left open the door that, hey, if there's interviews or something, then I will not take that day off and go out and make sure I don't miss anything. And so I'm coming to here today because we did have interviews earlier. We got to watch like 45 minutes of practice earlier. Well, not earlier today because it's the next day. On July 21st, on Tuesday, we got to watch, like I said, a good 45 minutes of some pretty intense back and forth, some high pressure practice moments, a lot of physicality, some yelling, some talking. And then when that was over, we talked to head men's basketball coach Jake Diebler and new additions Jimmy Williams and Curtis Givens III. So I'm going to run down some practice observations and some things that I think we saw today. This isn't going to be a crazy long podcast because I also realized that trying to just describe plays might get a little tedious. So I'm going to try to keep it as concise as possible. But I do have like 2 pages of notes, things that we saw today at practice. I've also posted a good 7.5 minutes worth of practice footage to dispatch.com that you can go watch. Posted some clips as well to my social media channels, my Instagram and TikTok pages. So you can go find some more content over there. And the practice footage, as well as full interviews with Diebler, Givens, and Williams, are also on dispatch.com. There's a playlist that has all the videos that I shoot, so you can easily find anything that you're looking for. But it's all up there. The main thing, or the first thing rather, we're going to talk about though is the confirmed news out of today, which is that Ohio State is taking a foreign exhibition trip, leaving actually 1 week from, now that it's the 22nd, a week from today. Buckeyes will be going to Puerto Rico for a foreign exhibition trip. So we're going to get into those details here in just a second. Before we do, I want to remind you that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. If you do subscribe, you'll automatically get the newest ones just as soon as our man, Patrick Flaherty, the Podfather, can grab them and publish them for us. While you're subscribing or downloading, please leave a review. Please click 5 stars, and please consider telling a friend. Thanks everyone for taking the time to do all those things. So, this foreign exhibition trip. The rules have changed. Teams used to only be able to do this once every 4 years. The NCAA has changed those rules. You can do them every year now. So this is the first year of that new rule. We'll see going forward if this means Ohio State does something every year, if they spread it out, what the plan ends up being. But the thought process back in the day was that this allowed, if you went to school and you played at that one school for 4 years, you could take a trip somewhere. Well, now that nobody stays anywhere for 4 years anymore, essentially. And so the rule changed. Schools can do this every year that they want. Comes with additional practices, so there's certainly that benefit to it, as well as the fact that you are just spending more time together. And this is an Ohio State roster right now that has 14 players on it now, as of now. That number is likely to grow. But of those 14, only 6 were on Ohio State's roster last year. So you're talking more than half of the team is new faces, and that percentage is actually going to grow before this is all said and done. So a trip like this gives a team an opportunity to get some extra work in and to do some more bonding and start to understand kind of who can do what as you start to move through a preseason. So we don't have all of the details just yet, and part of that is that Ohio State also doesn't have all of the details at this point, but what we do know, Ohio State will leave on the 29th, and the Buckeyes will actually fly to Miami and spend a day in Miami. They'll practice there, and then they will fly to San Juan, Puerto Rico, arriving on July 31st. And then the Buckeyes, while in Puerto Rico, will stay in one place. They'll practice. They'll certainly do some other things outside of basketball, again, to be determined at this point, or at least to be announced at this point. And they will play 2 games against teams that are unknown as of when we talked to Jake Diebler. Now, I think the hope is sort of that one of them will just be kind of a whatever team, and the other one maybe can provide a little bit more in the way of creating some adversity, I suppose would be a better or a way to describe it. Like a team that's going to push Ohio State at least a little bit to where they might have to see how some guys respond when a game is slightly competitive and it's not going against the same guys you've been going against all summer. So my understanding going in is the hope is to essentially play everyone pretty comparable minutes across the board. That will also then, or at least when the games are early or out of hand or what have you, but that's certainly when things would get, if things would get tight at any point, start to get a feel for who can do what in those moments. And you'd probably see more of what we might guess to be a first choice type lineup. But again, that kind of depends on how this shakes out and what these opponents are like. Jake Diebler did say that there will not be like a deep dive scouting report on these teams, and that's one thing that will differentiate these experiences from the preseason exhibitions, or the preseason scrimmages rather, that the Buckeyes will play, in addition to certainly then once games start to count for real. There will be much more of a focus on here's the other team, here's who can do what. There's not going to be a whole lot of that here. This is going to be more, all right, let's see what these guys can do. Let's see if after focusing inwardly, if guys can then take the things they've worked on and translate them to this international court against older teams, and just focus on the things that they need to focus on rather than, trying to take away this team's top scorer, these actions or things like that. So one of the things that the Diebler was asked about was just like, how important are these types of events now that rosters change over so much? And he said the obvious, that it's really important. He said it gives us an opportunity to speed up some game situations and learn a little bit about our guys, figure out how to handle adversity together. He said that's all stuff that's hard to create organically. You need to go play against somebody else. Now, Ohio State was initially planning for this to be a foreign exhibition trip to Israel, but for various reasons, including the fact that there's some safety concerns with trying to plan something like this to go there right now, they had to pivot, and the Buckeyes were able to secure a trip to Puerto Rico. That certainly has played a role in, like, they don't know who they're playing yet, and some of those other I think some of those other little details like that, because it was during this calendar year that they had to then start kind of shifting plans a little bit. It would be interesting too. I should have asked about this today. It just popped in my head now, but by playing in Puerto Rico, you don't have to get, visas and things like that. And we need a new wrinkle to all this is, like, with so many international players, I wonder the degree of difficulty of trying to schedule a foreign exhibition trip to outside of the United States with a roster of players who are not from the United States or that country. I'm sure there's probably some extra hurdles in that. This would allow them, certainly, obviously, to avoid that stuff. But as far as like what these games will maybe show or how Ohio State's going to approach them, Diebler said, quote, "It's going to force us to think on our feet. We're going to make our guys have to figure some stuff out." He said, "This is not meant to be an overcoaching trip. Our guys are going to have to figure some stuff out on the fly, and I'm excited to see who steps up from a leadership standpoint. We'll be prepared from a limited basis of what we want to accomplish, but going into this a little bit blind as to who we're going to play and what they're going to do." He said it's going to force guys to talk more. It's going to force them to figure some stuff out on the fly. That's part of the adversity that we're excited to experience together. These don't take away from the fact that Ohio State will play 3 preseason exhibitions as we get closer or, closer to the start of the season. Obviously, we know about the outdoor doubleheader featuring Ohio State versus Cincinnati and then Dayton versus Xavier. The Buckeyes will host a high major team for a public exhibition, and then there will also be a closed-door secret scrimmage at some point as well. Opponents on those final 2 still TBA, but there's going to be a lot more tune-ups than what we're accustomed to seeing, because again, the rules have changed on that. So these games are going to be some very early glimpses into who can do what, and maybe some ideas into who's going to be counted on. I think back to 4 years ago when Ohio State went to the Bahamas and played 2 exhibition games during the summer, and it was evident being there and in those, ballroom, in the ballroom there, that Bryce Sensabaugh was going to be a problem. I remember very clearly getting that picture being in there, and that obviously, ultimately did prove to be the case. So these are always interesting because it's easy for us to sit here still 3+ months removed from games that count. It's easy to overanalyze and nitpick right now, but these will be interesting looks into what this team can be, what some of these guys can do, and I'm excited to see how this all plays out. So that was like the news for today. I mean, we all knew that was happening, but Jake Diebler went in front of the cameras and talked about it for a couple of minutes today about what they're hoping to get out of this. And one other thing that I thought was interesting that came out of the interview, Diebler was asked something to the effect of is it easier to push guys and really coach them hard? Because there was some loud coaching today or yesterday at practice, and Diebler said on that front, he said we have to do a lot of teaching. They're not doing the same stuff they did last year. He said it's been a little bit of a slower pace, and he said that was something he evaluated going from year 2 to year 3. He said we have to get the message across in a way that can be received quickly. He said we have some returners who can help me, but he said, quote, "This team responds well to a little bit slower teaching. We figured that out pretty early. I'm holding myself accountable to make sure we're teaching at the right pace to really solidify that foundation since we have more time this summer." So I thought that was an interesting little peek into some of this team's makeup compared to last year's makeup. We heard a lot about how mature last year's team was and how far along they were, and how they didn't have to spend as much time on maybe some of the very basic stuff. It does seem like, and when you think about it, you've got 2 young freshmen in Anthony Thompson and LJ Smith, who are both going to play significant roles on the team. And when you have more than half new faces on your roster, it would make sense that things would maybe not move quite as quickly from an on-court learning standpoint. And I thought that was an interesting point from Jake Diebler today when we spoke to him. And he also spoke rather extensively about the leadership of John Mobley Jr. And I'm going to use this to segue into kind of what we saw in practice, but he talked about how critical being able to lean on someone like Mobley is going to be for this season. He said he's been impressed with the consistency that Mobley has led with. He said, "I knew he had the stuff to get there before the season started, but he's ahead of schedule in regards to that." He said his buy-in to being a leader has been great. The consistency with his voice, but his work ethic. He said he's here every single morning. When guys come in here to lift, they're seeing him come out of the gym in a lather. He said that sets a tone for our team. He also spoke about Mobley's defensive capabilities and the growth that he has shown at that end. We've talked about how that was a key point of emphasis when he got his NBA draft feedback, that he needed to improve defensively. It does seem like he's taken that to heart. And the periods that we've gotten to see practice and the glimpses we've gotten to have of this team, there's been some improvement there. And we saw that in moments during this practice. So I'm going to run down as much of this as I can here without it getting too boring, too redundant, but just going through some of the notes that I jotted down and seeing what sort of conclusion we can maybe draw from some of this. And one of the things right off the top was we saw them simulate, like, okay, it's a huddle, who does what, how do we draw it up, who stands where, okay, now go out and execute it. And granted, it was not against like a real defense, but it ended with an Amari Bynum corner three that he swished from the right corner. The shooting overall today was not great compared to like what we saw at the beginning of the summer. And as I've talked about, that's generally how it goes. They've done a lot of work recently focusing on the defensive side of the court. And it's something that Jake Diebler said they're focusing on defense even in the weight room. And when we asked Jimmy Williams and Curtis Givens III about that, they said, like, we were like, what does defense in the weight room look like? And they talked about, like, we'll be doing whatever. And then like Diebler will like blow a whistle or he'll yell, and they all have to like stop what they're doing, like get in a defensive stance and like hold it for an extended period of time. So there's been a real focus on like that kind of stuff. And to that end, there's some pretty heavy weightlifting session earlier in the morning, a lot of upper body stuff. So the shooting was not great today. Is my roundabout way of getting to that. But like very early on, Curtis Givens was not matched up with Junie, but Junie was driving on Justin Pippen, and Givens got in the gap, dug down, and knocked the ball loose and dove on it, and the place went nuts. Saw multiple plays today of guys getting on the floor and going all out for loose balls. Like the backcourt battles, I would say primarily between Mobley, Justin Pippen, Jimmy Williams, and Curtis Givens, just really intense, high-level, entertaining stuff. Like I found myself really watching the guards today. It just seemed like they caught more of my attention just for the way that they were really battling each other, going back and forth. And then, there was another play where I watched John Mobley Jr. run a pick and roll with Josh Ojonwuna going against Justin Pippen, and Ivan Yagovin ran the screen, read it perfectly, and then just swished a three-pointer like we see Mobley do very frequently. Heard the Jake Diebler yelling at one point, like there's an emphasis on rebounding, talking a lot about rebounding, and was explaining like, hey, if a shot goes up and your guy does this, do that, whatever. But he said, quote, your job is not done until we get a rebound. So like, don't think that just because your guy maybe is far away or what, like really emphasizing that point of just like, you're not done until we get the rebound. There was a sequence here with Amari Bynum where he got the ball in the right corner, kind of gave a shot fake, got his man to move a little bit, got some separation, got around him, got in the rim, pivoted, jumped, laid it in. It was really just flash of that athleticism that we really started to see from him as the last season went on. And then a play or two later, he had the ball in the backcourt, and I misread the situation and threw the ball out of bounds. The guy was not there in the backcourt to receive the pass. So, just little glimpses into that continuing growth process for Amari as he works to certainly become a little bit more of a perimeter player than he had to be a season ago. There was a sequence where John Mobley stripped Justin Pippen when he tried to split a double team and then dove on the ball and got the turnover. And then LJ Smith, who was frequently matched up with Curtis Givens, he deflected a pass to cause a turnover, and Jake Diebler was pretty fired up about that. There were a couple of points where he would have like a longish talk with LJ Smith, like explaining something. It might have been a concept that they haven't covered yet, or a concept that they covered but he hadn't arrived on campus yet. So like you can see as they go through these practices how Diebler, he talked in our interviews about like the program has non-negotiables. It doesn't matter what level you are, what stage you are in your career. Like there are some things that are non-negotiable, but also like recognizing you have to coach some guys differently, and different players are at different levels of experience and maturity. And, you can make a mistake a couple of times, but as long as it's not a non-negotiable, the reaction to that might be different depending on how experienced you are and how long you've been around. You saw him like really spend time with LJ Smith at least 3 different times during like the 45 minutes that we were there, where he was just kind of calmly explaining a situation, going over some footwork, explaining a read, talking him through something that had just happened. Like you really did see some just like calm coaching moments, even amid like all the chaos of what this practice was. Similarly, I thought, and this has been kind of a consistent, but it feels like Ivan Yagovin continues to get coached really hard. And that's a guy who has shown flashes. That's a guy who's had some struggles when we've been there, and has been, he's been in the program for 3 years. He's right there with John Mobley as far as like having been with Jake Diebler on the quote unquote scholarship side of things from day one. And there's been a lot of growth there. It's still very much a work in progress, but he's gotten some tough coaching. I've definitely noticed that when we've gotten to see some of these moments. Watched a play where Anthony Thompson missed a shot, but was able to follow it and get his own offensive rebound. And then eventually it was either that possession or the next one, but he was matched up with Andrei Jelovich, and he drilled a 3-pointer over Jelovich. It was kind of a rough day for Jelovich in a couple of moments. There were a few times where I just felt like, there was a couple of minutes later, like he was driving and Curtis Givens blocked a shot, which like credit to Curtis Givens, but also Curtis Givens is a 6'3" guard. Andrei Jelovich is a 6'10" power forward / center. That was an eye-opening play for me. Just watching that happen. Another play where Amari Bynum came up with a steal. Read the play, jumped in the passing lane, stole the ball, and got the ball to Anthony Thompson. But then Jelovich was able to block Thompson's shot. At this point, I just wrote down there's a lot of contact on the floor, just really physical. They kept having to stop things to mop up the sweat. Saw a right-handed hook from Ivan Yagovin. Saw Jake Diebler talking to Justin Pippen about needing to play off of 2 feet, needing to play off of 2 feet. That did get better as practice went on, but they're continuing to work on stuff like that with him. Saw a really nice slip screen that led to an easy bucket at the rim between LJ Smith and Alex Smith. And Alex wasn't someone that I noticed a ton today. But that was a play that did catch my eye, where I was like, man, if you'd have told me before the season started, I'd be watching an LJ Smith to Alex Smith slip screen layup. It would not have made a whole lot of sense like 2 months ago. So yeah, in addition to Diebler, like I said, being definitely coaching Ivan Yagovin hard, he talks a lot to Justin Pippen too. When we've been there, I've seen a lot of like in a huddle, kind of challenging Justin, telling him specifically things that he needs to be better at, or ways that he needs to help his team more. That's been a constant presence, I feel like, in the open practices we've seen too. He had a really nice play, Pippen did, where he was matched up with Mobley, and those battles are really fun to watch. But he was able to get Mobley on his back hip. And I know I think the term that they use for this is like hostage, where you have your defender on your hip and he can't get in front of you, and you're able to get closer to the rim, something Bruce Thornton really excelled at during his 4 years. Pippen did that to Mobley and was able to keep him back and then get to the rim and finish through the foul, drew an and one. I thought that was a really impressive play. And then at the other end, you saw John Mobley shake, I think it was Pippen. He got past him and cut from the left side of the wing, or the left wing, across the key, almost to the right elbow. And he stopped on a dime and threw up like a fake and two defenders flew past him. He stopped, collected himself, and then just hit the mid-range jumper. And I thought that's something that I feel like he would have tried to force an action in that situation last year or the year before that. But that was worth writing down for me. Couple more like nice plays from like Anthony Thompson. Like he hit a baseline jumper that was impressive. He had a fast break where Mobley turned it over, and Anthony Thompson got the ball on like an outlet, and he was going up the middle of the floor, and he like spun twice, crossing mid court, and then threw it up ahead to Justin Pippen, who threw down the dunk. And it was an impressive athletic play by Anthony Thompson for sure, who just he looks a little more comfortable, a little more calm than he did a month or two ago. There was another play where Justin Pippen swished a 3-pointer. He was at the top of the circle, and Alex Smith was trying to close out on him, and he gave like a head fake. Alex went by, one extra dribble, hit the 3. A lot of talking from John Mobley. A lot of talking from him. Good play, tough play, like talking to people after getting a stop. Like there was a play, he got tied up with like Amari Bynum, and he either got the jump ball or forced a turnover. But he was like talking a lot after that. And Diebler kind of challenged Amari and said something about how like, I know Junie's gotten a lot better on defense. He won that battle. Not sure how many one-on-one battles Mobley won with Bynum last season. I mentioned the Curtis Givens block on a Yelovich drive. He then hit a baseline jumper similar to Anthony Thompson. He's definitely impressed overall with his general shooting touch. LJ Smith had another shot like that. Like he looks like a guy who you don't notice as much. Like, oh man, he's a freshman. He's a really young freshman. It's like he just kind of looks like another guy. He was primarily matched up with Curtis Givens, and each of them had some moments. You can see that Curtis is a little more experienced, but LJ's definitely making progress. And then the practice ended. I don't know exactly how they were scoring this or what like the final whatever was, but the last play ended with an Ivan Yagovin slam dunk, and it won whatever drill that was. So his team didn't have to run. The other team had to run, and they were fired up. And then it was funny because they're yelling, and he chest bumped Anthony Thompson, and Anthony went flying. He landed on the floor or on the ground, and it was just kind of funny to look over there and see like they're celebrating, and they're like, why is Anthony Thompson on the ground? It's like, oh yeah, he got chest bumped out of the way by Ivan Yagovin. So I'm going to wrap it up with that. Good to see what we got to see. I'll keep you posted as we move further along here, closer to this trip that Ohio State will take in a week. And as soon as there's more to talk about and more things to break down, I'll be back here on this microphone to bring it to you. So thanks everyone who's been listening through the summer, and everyone who continues to support the podcast and send in their thoughts and their observations and their suggestions on who to talk to. So keep them coming. Hope you enjoyed the Zed Key episode. I was really happy to make that happen for such a loyal listener. And for those of you that did listen, I hope you enjoyed it, because I thought it was a lot of fun too. So as always, you can send along your questions, your comments, your love notes, your hate mail, and otherwise constructive criticism to me at Adam Jardy on Twitter or ajardydispatch.com. Thank you again for listening. Thanks to Patrick Flaherty, the Podfather, for getting this out there. I'll be back with you sometime next week. I don't know when. We'll figure it out. But until then, be kind, take care, and we'll talk soon.
Be sure and subscribe to the Buckeye Extra podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.